Welcome, NutritionRadio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry, a university nutrition professor of over 20 years and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. Come on in. Market news from the food world. Hey, everybody. We've got a different kind of market news coming at you this time. It has to do with those plaza-front weight loss centers. There are so many kinds of them. And after 30 years in nutrition and weight management, I can't really say I've known anyone who religiously attended one of these sorts of centers year in and year out. In any case, one broadly recognized chain, famous if you will, chain, is in the news. Jenny Craig, this is according to NBC News, Jenny Craig tells employees it will shut its doors. And there's an alternate title presented here on this webpage, Jenny Craig to shutter as weight loss drugs and apps gain ground. This particular news piece is from May 3rd, Sarah Ruberg. It says Jenny Craig will close its doors after 4 decades in the weight loss and nutrition business, according to internal communications to employees that were reviewed by NBC News. To quote the news piece here, this is, quote, due to its inability to secure additional financing. Now, the chain operated about 500 company-owned and franchised stores. They were apparently acquired by HIG Capital back in 2019 and now employed about 1,000 people. Apparently for the past couple of weeks, Jenny Craig had been running out of money and it was searching for a buyer. And there are some reports from at least some employees that they fear the company would be filing for bankruptcy by the end of the week. There was really an abruptness to all of this, as I understand it, where the sort of internal communication went out and it looked very brief, like, very soon we're done here, at least as far as their typical physical presence. I guess a spokesperson said that they were embarking on a next phase of the business to evolve with the changing landscape of today's consumers. Maybe they're suggesting, this is my interjection here, that the plaza front approach isn't as helpful as apps and the things that offer convenience more than driving somewhere. I do see some advantage to actually meeting face-to-face with someone. But in any case, it says, like many other companies, we're currently transitioning from brick-and-mortar retail business to a customer-friendly e-commerce-driven model. But then NBC reported that there is no indication that the most recent communication to employees that the transition to e-commerce would still happen. A little more background here. It says Jenny Craig was founded in 1983 to help people lose weight, and the brand became a household name. I certainly recognize it because of its weight loss program. The program provided special menus designed by chefs and nutritionists to help consumers lose weight. This, however, has been critiqued a little. We're going to get to that in just a little bit here. A lot of these weight loss center approaches, they've been pretty heavily critiqued over the years, partly because maybe they're trying to sell prepackaged foods, served on a small plate, so it looks like there's more there. Again, sort of a processed food, or taking the learning out of it maybe a little more than they should. There has to be some kind of business model, of course. They're going to have to be selling something. I mean, they're not going to be selling these GLP-1 analogs like Rybelsus. And again, it's really hard to compete with something like that, although we've talked about before, some of those drugs cause stomach pain and like nausea, vomiting sorts of problems. But again, popping a pill certainly seems a lot more convenient than driving to a local center. Maybe that's a sad commentary on Americans' desire just to go pop a pill, which, by the way, I want to apologize to international listeners. A lot of the times when I talk about stuff like licensure and practicing nutrition and some of these companies, it's pretty U.S.-centric. I'll do my best to look into other parts of the world and see the situation there. Of course, this is obviously my perspective as a commentator. But here's a little critique. I was just mentioning these from Healthline. Jenny Craig Diet Review, Everything You Need to Know. This is by Ellen Landis, and it was reviewed by Grant Tinsley. I've heard of Grant before. He's a PhD. He's certified in sports nutrition through the ISSN. Anyway, they gave Jenny Craig 2.96 out of 5 stars. A diet program that provides structure and support for people who want to lose weight. They delivered low-calorie prepackaged meals and one-on-one support from a coach. Here's the kind of the scoreboard, though. Overall, 2.96 out of 5. Yikes. Pros and cons. Let's just skip to the pros and cons. The Max Up weight loss plan included one-to-one coaching. The con would be, though, that coaches are previous members rather than qualified nutrition professionals. Listen, I have some respect for people who are in the trenches and have gone through a process, but you also have to be careful about the uneducated, if you will, or unlicensed person giving advice. But it did say it gave pre-proportioned prepared meals and snacks. This sounds like the kinds of things that I've heard about before. The meals were free from high fructose corn syrup, trans fats, MSG, artificial colors and sweeteners, things like that. Some plans required the purchase of additional meals and snacks. They were expensive to begin with, not suitable for people with specific dietary needs or preferences. So overall, I'm perceiving this as a lukewarm review from some qualified people. They do offer a bit of factual information here. It says, according to the Jenny Craig website, the average member loses 1 to 2 pounds per week on the program, and this was supported by some research. It says, for example, in one study, a group of overweight sedentary women followed Jenny Craig for 12 weeks and lost an average of 11.7 pounds each. A second study found that Jenny Craig helped people lose roughly 5% more weight than Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, or SlimFast after a year. That's curious. I know that some professional groups have sort of aligned themselves, in a sense, with Weight Watchers or some of these other groups. I've heard individual stories about things like weekly weigh-ins and getting applauded or having applause withheld if you don't reach a weight loss goal and that kind of thing. I think we're playing with fire here. This is my personal opinion on this kind of stuff. Exercise is often a part of some of these programs, and today's about food market news, but although I'm talking about a lot of these weight loss centers with a broad brush here, the Healthline piece that I was just mentioning does speak to the Jenny Craig thing specifically, saying exercise is not required. 30 minutes of physical activity 5 days a week is recommended to improve results. And then your coach will work with you to come up with a realistic exercise goal. My personal opinion here, or professional opinion, would be that I would really like to see people working with an exercise physiologist or a certified strength conditioning specialist, a dietitian, a counselor if they have preoccupation with food and body image issues and that kind of thing. But at the same time, I feel like there's this upstream battle for a lot of these places that are trying to help people lose weight because they're working against a food and restaurant industry that's oftentimes very indulgent and about making profits by selling inexpensive, foods with good margins, and oftentimes they're very calorie dense and conveniently quickly consumed. Think about sugary colas and pops and all that sort of thing. It's just a real uphill battle, and not everybody, of course, can have this team of specialists that I was just mentioning. It'd be very, very expensive to be able to do that sort of thing. So we'll see what happens with this particular instance that's being reported on in the news with Jenny Craig. Is this a sign of the times that we're going to move more toward pharmaceuticals or just bariatric surgery or something like that, some other technological move? Are we going to see other weight management businesses like I've talked about here follow a similar trend and try to go online or just close doors altogether? It really shows sort of the torturous sign of the times as we become more and more obese. And we're in a world where transitioning to quote-unquote normal food, even though a lot of these business models, these companies try to do that, it would be very difficult to eat very small portions of your favorite food all the time in perpetuity. Because as we've talked about in the past here on nutritionradio.org, there is this wagon approach. You have to think about your body weight like a wagon that's following you wherever you go. And if you go back to a calorie surplus, perhaps especially if you've been in a calorie deficit for a long time, your body's going to store that. It's going to do exactly what the environment imposes, and you're going to regain the weight, right? Commercial weight loss programs, again, painting with a very broad brush, they don't have a brilliant 3 and 5 year kind of success as far as maintaining all of the weight loss or even most of the weight loss. Although I have seen data that if you make exercise a bigger part of that picture, then the weight maintenance for a long period of time is much, much better. In any case, there's some food industry news for you today. If you like the content, you can make a comment on YouTube. It's our backup, Lawnman07, or just leave a review on iTunes. That's very helpful. I'd love to hear people's input, especially because we have a core of people that have listened to some of the podcasts I've been a part of in the past. I really appreciate and respect your input. So that's going to be it for today, and we'll see you next time. The NutritionRadio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.